Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Milestone and my channel is all about finding your passion, fulfilling your potential and achieving your goals. We're back for another episode of my Made It series where I interview people from different backgrounds, different fields. They tell us how they came up and hopefully that will help inspire you. And today I'm joined by a brilliant entrepreneur with a revolutionary home plant and plant care business that secured funding from Google recently. It's Deborah Choi. Deborah, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, this is good. I'm really excited. We've had a lot of people asking for more female entrepreneurs to join us, so I'm really happy to have you today. So Deborah, it'd be great if you could start off telling us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria, and my family moved to the US when I was quite young. So I grew up there. And I've been living now in Europe for the last 6 years, with Berlin being home for most of that. Outside of just the geographic stuff, I've been an entrepreneur for most of my career, starting with my first venture, which I built in the dorm room in the early 2000s. It was an e-commerce business. We were selling vintage apparel. Moved on from that to the next business, which was a media startup. Ran a marketing agency for many years when I was living in New York. And I've been very deep in the world of plants since late 2018. Outside of my startup Bosk, which I'm happy to share more about, I also am very importantly a mother. So I have a 5-year-old daughter that holds me accountable and makes sure that I switch off when I need to. And I'm also a founder of an organization, a new one called Founderland. And this was started in late 2019 as a platform to connect and inspire women of color founders here in Europe and in the UK to grow their businesses with the community and to get funded. So I'm happy to talk about entrepreneurship and the wild juggle of doing so as a mom as well. Just really excited to be on the show today.
Wow, so much great stuff to unpack. You've done so much already, but I think to start, could you tell us about your current business now, so Bosk? Tell us about what it does and how the idea came about.
Right. So, I think when you think about houseplants, or when I talk with a lot of people about houseplants, what I often hear is about all the various houseplants that they've killed, myself included. So I think that there's something really interesting about this category that people, whether or not you have plants, you know someone who does, you're familiar with the space. But what drove me to actually found a business in this category was really kind of looking at all the different challenges across the whole kind of supply chain, the ways in which the distribution is working with plants, and also very importantly, the consumer challenges in entering the category and staying within it. So what I mean by that is, when you look at this plant industry, it's an industry that hasn't really changed in over 25 years. In terms of who grows the plants, it's heavily dominated by growers based in the Netherlands. And in terms of who sells the plants, it's a very retail-driven industry. So over 90% of plants that people buy, whether we're talking about Europe or even the US, this is a global percentage, are buying plants from non-specialty retailers. And what I mean by that are, the Swedish furniture houses and the tool shops of the world are the main sellers in this industry. And the result for many people who want to buy plants is, first of all, a lot of inconvenience. You have to pick a time when you can go to this plant shop or this tool shop and figure out how to bring all those plants home and buy pots and buy soil and figure out, all of these things, which can be inconvenient for many people, especially living in urban areas. And then additionally, after you actually have the plants in your home, you're largely left unattended. So, for many people, plant care is very DIY or do it yourself. You have to maybe attend some workshops or read a lot of articles on Google and try to figure out through a lot of trial and error what your plant needs and what you need to do to take care of them. So with all of these challenges, I saw with my co-founders a really great opportunity to build a direct-to-consumer brand in this space. So with Bosque, we first start off, of course, with high quality plants, plants that are grown sustainably with the proper certification. So we are very selective about the growers that we work with. But even more so, we are very focused on the customer experience as a DTC brand. So it's all about, little things like you don't have to know a bunch of Latin to shop with Bosque. Maybe you know a Monstera deliciosa, but we're going to call that plant Monica on our website. So there's this kind of friendly way that we approach collecting plants, bringing them into your home. And with Bosque, we guide our customers after that purchase with an app. So with the Bosque app, you're able to have a chat with one of our plant experts or horticulturalists live. We have 24/7 assistance, which is kind of AI-based assistance, because we know many things about the life cycle of your plants. We know that, for example, in the spring, you're going to start having growth and you might have certain things happening with your plants because of that. So we really want to bring a lot of convenience to this category with an e-commerce online experience, but also importantly, turn our customers into plant experts along the way with a bit of tech.
Wow, awesome. Great. It's a great idea. Huge gap in the market you've identified there. And it sounds like you're doing brilliantly well with that. I think for me, it'd be good to know, just looking back now, how you started to think about becoming an entrepreneur. When did you think to yourself, right, I want to be an entrepreneur? Because you touched on a lot of businesses that you've started. So what made you think, I want to be an entrepreneur? And what gave you the belief to actually go out there and do it?
Right. It's such a good question. And it's also, in many ways, one of the reasons why I started Founderland. So when I started my first venture, which was called Avant-Garde, and it was an online vintage shop selling vintage apparel across the US, and eventually we were also selling internationally. I didn't go in with the vocabulary. I didn't even know that I was an entrepreneur. I didn't have the representation. I didn't have people around me who looked like me, that were building businesses, and I could look at them and say, oh, I can also do that. That's something that's within reach for me. So actually, when I was at university, I was studying political science, and I had the plan to go on to law school. Being the child of immigrants, I was not planning to take a high-risk path of entrepreneurship. I really wanted to, build upon what my parents gave to me by getting a great education and doing something traditional with it. So this was the path that I was on because that was what I knew. That's what I saw in my community, that if you are able to get into university, make the most of it, become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, do something really safe. And I was like, okay, then I will do that too. That was the representation. But what happened was, on the side, outside of, courses and being at the library, I and a few friends, because we didn't even call ourselves co-founders back then, we're going to vintage like thrift stores and flea markets and finding really cool apparel that was not for us. And we were like, well, it could be fun to maybe make a website. None of us had done that before. And it was like the early 2000s. So everything about tech seemed interesting and cool. So we built a website and we told friends at university, and over time it started to grow. And what happened at that point that really kind of was very pivotal for me in terms of saying, okay, maybe I don't want to be a lawyer. Maybe I actually have other options available to me, was the support that I actually got from my university. So I was again on this path of studying political science, but I had some really important mentors at my university who were like, well, why don't you take an accounting course? You're working on a business, and this is something that you should know about. And maybe you think about this or think about that, and let's work together to build a formal business plan. These were and consider yourselves entrepreneurs, just the basic terminology. So in my own experience, I wish that I had representation. I wish that I had a role model who was building an online business, and I could kind of look at her or him and say, okay, I can do that. But as luck would have it, I actually had the support from my university instead that helped me to at least formalize this project and start to see that this could be a path that I could take as well.
No, love it. And yeah, you touched on a lot there. So lack of representation and support. But look, you're paving the way. You're paving the way. So look, really happy to have you here. So you touched on some challenges, but were there any other challenges that you had to overcome throughout that entrepreneurship journey that you went on?
Right. So I would say, I mean, I've like I mentioned, I've started different ventures in the past. I've always started off as a bootstrapped entrepreneur. I think that, in many ways, I thought, going to find investors was ephemeral. Like, who are those investors? They're not necessarily people in my community. There's not this friends and family thing that I've heard of that I can tap into. So I thought, let me just build something that can be profitable, that makes sense on a, say, unit economics basis, that I can grow. And that's what I did with all my previous ventures. I would say that something that was an interesting kind of personal challenge for me was in building Bosk. We do have investors. So this whole path of fundraising, of having a pitch deck, but even more importantly, knowing the terminology again, having that confidence to negotiate with an investor, and knowing that there might be a kind of power imbalance in that, but also finding my space within that has been, in many ways, a very new learning for me, and one that I'm really excited about. I think that this whole entrepreneurship journey is really all about learning, but it's been also, not just learning and interesting, but also challenging. It's challenging to raise money for any founder. But I think it's especially challenging if you are a person of color, if you are a woman founder, if you are not the, say, typical Stanford dropout founder. It's harder to get that in, to build that conviction, and definitely got a lot more no's than yeses in that process.
I mean, look, great to see you here and, having overcome all those obstacles and barriers. I think one thing I've been really blessed to do is speak to loads of great entrepreneurs like yourself. And one common pattern I've noticed now is actually that they've all started loads of, other ventures before they actually found the one that was the big success. How much do you think those early sort of ventures helped you, give you the skills, the knowledge, the understanding of what it takes to make a successful business?
Yeah, so I always tell, I mentor some founders who are like first-time founders occasionally. And I always say in many ways, there is no failure. Failure is perspective. A business can close. A product cannot do well in the market. It's all about what you can learn from that and how you can turn things around or take the learnings to the next project or the next business. So, for me, I think that although my various ventures, a fashion business or a media startup or a marketing agency, are of course very different from each other, and also especially different from running a plant business, I definitely took so much from each one. And it was little and big things, like even, for example, knowing what kind of business I like to run versus one I don't like to run. Running a marketing agency, I loved so many aspects of it, but the reason that I kind of stepped out of that and switched to product was I realized I'm a lot more interested in building a consumer product that can scale, as opposed to having B2B sales conversations. That was just kind of okay, I've tried that. Now I see what I like, and I can kind of move my way in this direction a bit more. All the way to things like, taking lessons in terms of management style, because over time, as we grow in our role as founders and as we move from one venture to another, hopefully we're also taking a lot of those lessons in how to be a good manager, how to be an inspirational person to your team, to the community around your business. And I would definitely say that in these different experiences of being a founder and growing a team, I've learned so much about management style and also crafting what is my own personal management style.
So all those early ventures helped you build the skills, the knowledge. They helped you find your passion and build that sort of persona that you want to be when it comes to sort of leading a person that leads business. That's great to hear. Can you talk us through some of your career highlights to date? It'd be great to hear about those from you.
Career highlights. This one is always hard for me because I get uncomfortable about talking about myself in this way.
And there are too many. There might be too many.
But, I think, honestly, the biggest wins have been for me when I see people that I worked with before, whether it's a freelancer or an intern or a full-time employee with my various ventures and even my current venture, move on and grow. As a manager, that is so personally rewarding. For example, from my very, very first venture, I'm still in touch with quite a few people that I worked with. One went on to found her own company, multiple startups, and I celebrate those wins. And I see that, I was part of that person's journey, and that's so, so rewarding. That would be one that comes immediately to mind. There's been several accolades that I've received that I'm deeply grateful for, that have also afforded me rather a platform where I can connect with other founders and connect even with potential partners, business partners, and so forth. With my first venture, I and my co-founders joined the Business Week Top 25 Under 25 list. And as you'd mentioned already, with Bosk, I joined the first cohort for the Google for Startups Black Founders Fund for Europe this year. And these have been, of course, enormous opportunities of recognition, but also, in joining these lists, I see that, it's an opportunity to make something of it for others, to pave the way. I definitely feel this is the responsibility of founders who make it, to show others how we did it, and how they can do it too. So those have been some career highlights. On a personal level, as a mom, I have to say that's been the biggest job and the biggest learning opportunity of my life so far. And in many interesting ways, there's been a lot of, when I reflect on each year as my daughter gets older, kind of what I've gained in terms of being a better person, and how that's been kind of infiltrating things outside of my home life. For one, for sure, I feel like I'm so much more patient with myself, patient with others, patient with the process. I used to be, prior to being a mom, totally a workaholic and very hard on myself, and, making really high goals and just always just going straight for them. And I wouldn't say that I've relaxed from making goals, of course, but I think that I've just become a bit softened about what that process looks like to get there. And, all the different things that can come up that maybe look like derailments, but are really just parts of the path. So I think that this opportunity to be someone's mom has absolutely made me a better founder as well.
Wow, so profound, so deep. Absolutely love that. And you touched on it, but how important do you think it is to give back to sort of young, aspiring entrepreneurs, in particular women and Black people and people from other diverse backgrounds?
It's so incredibly important. When I think of my girlfriends in particular, my Black girlfriends who are doing big things for big companies, we sometimes have chats about their side ideas, the ventures that they would like to build someday, to leave their own mark outside of, the mark that they're leaving for a Fortune 100 or Fortune 500. And I think that, for many people who look like me and look like us. We know the playbook to succeed, right? We know go to university, get a good job, save money. And we do that. When we know the playbook, we do it. But there's something about this kind of white tower that is entrepreneurship that I think can be really hard to penetrate if you don't know the playbook. Like, what does it mean to have an MVP? And at what point do you start to get outside capital? What's the traction points that suggest you can go to investors? And I just think that there's so much talent in our community that is brought into tech companies or big companies when we can be building more of our own businesses. We can be employing more people in our community, and we can be showing to the next generation that it is possible. And I think that it's all a matter of, for the ones of us who do already make this venture into this honestly wild world of entrepreneurship, really opening up our playbooks and saying, here's how it works. Here's what I did. Here's who I talked to, and this is what they did. And opening up, how this works so that more people can take part of it and more people can start their own businesses.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's what we need. We've got so much talent. We need to start our own businesses. Let's get out there and do it. Believe in ourselves. Well, look, I love that. I think as just to wrap up now, because we kind of covered all the questions, it'd be great to sort of share how people can connect with you online. Where can they find you?
Oh, great. So maybe we can drop some links as well. I love to be connected. So I will have my LinkedIn account as well. But if you'd like to follow Bosk's journey, it's boskplants.com. I'll also drop in our socials for the brand. But I would love to be connected with the listeners to this community as well. So thank you so much for having me. And I would be so excited to be connected to more people within this community. So please reach out. Thank you again.
No, thank you for joining, Deborah. And if you enjoyed the video, please comment below if you've got any questions for Deborah, or if you want to see more content like this. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because I've got lots more content to come. So thanks for watching, and let's keep chasing those goals.